got everybody you need?
Yep.
We're on. We're ready. All right, my name is Michael Garrett, Chair. I call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Historic District Commission to order this 8th day of April 2021. There is a quorum present. The roster of the staff to the commission, commission members, and the technical posts that they fill in accordance with the requirements of the Hagerstown zoning ordinance are all filed with the city of Hagerstown, are available on request of any applicant, and hereby made a part of the legal record of each and every application heard today. All decisions rendered are based on the Secretary of Interior standards and guidelines as adopted by the city of Hagerstown. Each decision is made on a case-by-case basis and is not intended to be precedent setting. If you have any cell phones or other electronic devices, please make sure they have been silenced. Please understand that all meetings are being recorded and broadcast live on YouTube. We have two types of cases, consent agenda and design review. For consent agenda, I'll ask anybody in our audience, whether here present or via Zoom, if they have any issues with those particular cases. If not, I will then ask commission members if they have any issues with any of the consent agenda items. If there are no issues, we will then like to approve those particular cases and those applicants will be free to leave the meeting. For design review, when your case is called, please come to the table and join with the commission. For the record, please state your name and address. There will be a brief synopsis of your application from our staff consultant. After that, the floor will then be turned over to the applicant for any further elaboration. After that, the floor will then be open for discussion by commission members prior to rendering a decision on that application. At this time, were the minutes ready for March 25th? All right, they were not. All right, so first up, consent agenda item HDC case 2021-18. Take it nobody in our audience is here to speak out against those particular consent agenda items. Hearing nothing, commission members, any concerns with this particular case?
Just wanted to confirm that in the full proposal that the coping and other things are consistent with the improved material choices from the prior application, since it's not clear.
Mr. Harmon, did you hear that?
Hello, this is his wife. We're on vacation, so we're trying to move off to the side and hear everything. I did not hear that.
Hi, just in the application, it didn't call out the material for around the pool, and I was just asking if it's on the same material choices from your prior application that was approved.
So yes, it should be the same material that we're using for the patio.
All right, commission members, any other comments, discussion? If not, we'll entertain a motion for adoption, please.
Mr. Chairman, I reviewed materials submitted in case number 22021-18 associated staff report recommendations, and I reviewed the property in question. Staff report recommends approval of this application as consistent with the applicable standards adopted by the commission, and no one has appeared at this hearing with concerns about issues with or objections to this application. Therefore, I move that this commission adopt the staff evaluation and recommendations in this case as its own and grant certificates of appropriateness to the applicant for case HDC 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, those against? Motion carries. All right,
Thank you, Ms. Harmon, you're done.
You were in vacation.
Thank you.
all right, next up, we have HDC for design review, HDC case 2021-19, Cultural Trail, site plan review.
Kids.
And I'll be handling the questions for the city. We'll have to do the city engineer couldn't be here. This is HTC case 2021-19. The applicant is the City of Hagerstown Parks and Engineering Department. Property is located at 45 West Washington Street in lands west of the district courthouse. Property is in the downtown local historic district. Resources are G, they're not contributing open spaces. Photograph of the property is shown on page 1 of your staff report, showing the general current condition of the property as viewed from West Washington Street. On page 2, there's 2 additional photographs. The top one is a photograph of the area which will be used for the trail extension alongside the district courthouse. The area that's involved is the area that you see behind the 3 sections of Jersey barrier on the right of the driveway as you go in. And then lastly, the third photograph is an area of the plaza area to the rear of the county office building and to the rear of the district courthouse and the rear of the Maryland Theater, which is going to be the plaza area. And before I move on with the staff report, I just need to point out a couple of things. This body does not have any authority within the street or alley rights of way, and also no authority on state property. So there's a couple of these things that are actually on the district courthouse property. And then the alley itself is not within the purview, but there is plenty of improvements on multiple properties here. The area, the walkway walking alongside the district courthouse is one of your 5 currently on your 5 property being obtained by the city. One of the plaza area will be listed down currently the parking area behind this old Montgomery Ward building, which is the county office building. But part of that is also going to spill out into the alleyway. It's kind of a mixed bag kind of environment. And then of course the area within the property where it's going to connect to West Washington Street itself, obviously, is within the purview. But the street and alley rights of way and the property of the state, however, are not. Description of working plans. The city of Hagerstown is finalizing plans to continue the cultural trail from Antietam Street, past the district courthouse, across Library Alley, and through the former Updegraff Hat Store site to West Washington Street, and improve a plaza area behind the Maryland Theater at the intersection of Rochester Place and Library Alley. Those improvements within the alley rights of way are being purview of the commission, but those on the Updegraff site and adjacent to the courthouse are within the purview, or within your purview. The street wall along West Washington Street has been previously approved by this commission. This review is for the site plan only in order to forward the site plan to the planning commission for its approval. Material details will follow at a later date. There's a lot of materials that are associated with the detail and nitty-gritty of what will actually be constructed. However, what we're acting on here is a site plan, a complete set of role plans are with the chairman, if anybody wants to look at the details. The purpose is getting you're looking at the general layout and the fact of what there will be paving in certain places or landscaping in certain places. But we don't have, this is the work we're going to use, this is the paving extent we're going to use, this is the trash can receptacle we're going to use. That we don't have yet. We don't need that to get that in front of the planning commission site plan group. So the details will come back to you later date. So you're looking at providing overall approval of the general layout design of the park. There will be a paver trail that connects West Washington Street sidewalk to Library Alley behind the adjacent feed store building. The rest of this space will be landscaped per the attached landscaping plan. The trail crosses Library Alley and follows the side of the district court building to Antietam Street in an area currently occupied by the eastern edge of a private commercial parking lot. Landscaping and black metal fencing, consistent with other fencing in the courthouse property, will be installed along the trail. The masonry dumpster enclosure will be located in the east rear of the plaza. Behind the county office building, the current parking area will be repaved and used as a plaza, but also as a trailer staging area for axe loading and unloading at the rear loading dock of the Maryland Theater. The 2 alleys will be repaved with scored concrete, and a trash enclosure for the Maryland Theater will be installed behind the district court building, made of the same black coated and slatted chain link fencing material adjacent to it that includes the utility equipment for the courthouse. There will be benches, interpretive markers, trash receptacles, and other ephemera typically found in smaller open pocket parks. parks. Again, those details will be brought to you at a later date. Staff recommendation is approval. This review is for the site plan for the location, layout, and general materials approach to the development of this facility in order to allow the site plan to move to the planning commission for their review and approval. Material details of individual elements will be brought to you for approval at a subsequent meeting. Any improvements within the street or alley rights of way are not subject to HDC review, nor any improvements on the state district courthouse property. Secretary of Interior Standards number 2, 3, 9, and 10. In the materials that you received in your packet, you received the cover sheet, then you received the overall site plan layout showing the general location of all the major improvements where the trail is going to go along the courthouse, across the back behind the alley, through the pocket park of West Washington Street, and then the area behind the county office building that says proposed concrete plaza and all, which serves the dual purpose of an assembly area, but also a staging area for the theater when needed. The next page in your packet that you received is the demolition plan showing the areas that are affected. Next page after that is the phase 2 utilities plan, which shows a good colored idea of the landscaping and layout of the trail as it goes along the district court building, connects into the alley to the rear. Next page after that is the construction plan for the trail. Basically, they're going to move parking spaces inboard on that commercial parking lot next to the courthouse. Put in a brick paver trail and a fence. And then the next page after that continues it up into the former upcraft site. And then the next page after that, I'm getting up to this page here at this point. This is how the improvements will be laid out behind the pocket park and the county office building. With various paving elements. There's multiple types of paving elements that are going in this space. And they do keep in mind part of it's the alleyway or part of it's not. Then page L-L1-01, the hardscape plan is provided as well. And that's all I have. So that's basically what you're looking at is the general layout.
Commission members, any questions?
That's the thing to
The plan is open, sorry.
oh. There you go.
Everything looks like it's laid out pretty well. And part of the site plan, what we're looking at, everything basically at ground level.
Is what?
Everything's at ground level.
Yeah, we're not building buildings here. We're not altering buildings. With the exception of that 2-story wall, which is already been approved by the spot.
All right, there's no comments, discussion, sounds like everybody's in agreement to move forward, and we'll entertain a motion for adoption.
Mr. Chairman, I reviewed materials submitted in case number of HDC 2021719, associated staff report recommendations. I give the property in question, staff report recommends approval of this application as considered by applicable standards adopted by the commission. And no one is here to express concerns about issues with or objections to this application. Therefore, I move that this commission adopt the staff evaluation recommendations in this case, and grant certificates of appropriateness to the applicant for case number HDC 2021-19.
there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Moving on then, next case, HDC 2021-14 for 14 to 16 East Antietam Street for demolition. It was a continuation from our last meeting on March 25th.
Before we get started, if each of you could do a sound check just to make sure the Bowman team can hear you. Mr. Carroll,
Can you hear me?
We can hear some of you guys. It's hard to hear a few.
Check, can you hear that?
Yeah, that's better.
Pretty check.
Leslie,
Check, check.
Hello,
Chairman,
Hello?
Powell,
hello.
and Chris.
Check.
Can you hear everybody now?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, make sure that y'all have your mics close to you. This is a continuation from the last meeting. Y'all arranged to have a walkthrough of the building, which was hosted by the applicant, and also the adjacent building, so you can get some perspective on what their longer-term plans and goals are for the site. Basically, staff doesn't have anything to add at this point. I mean, you are where you are.
Does our applicant have anything else they would like to add at this point?
No, I think we'll let the tour speak for itself.
All right, could you identify yourself for the record, please?
Yes, identifiers.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're still not coming through clearly. Jeff Tedrick, President of Construction, Bowman Development.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, commission members, comments? Looking at this information that's in front of us. I'll go first. First, I'd like to say thank you for taking us through the building. And thank you for showing us the larger scope of the project down there. I know I was very impressed with it, and the quality of work and the vision's outstanding. Is exactly what the city needs. I just have some questions to reconcile in my mind. When you're looking at the rehabilitation cost, and I think I understand, I want to just confirm the answer. Was the rehabilitation cost for the entire interior, exterior, and the fire damage, or was it just a portion of that?
That was all of it, in the total.
If they're referencing the insurance report, that would have only covered fire restoration, not a building rehab in its entirety.
Yeah, yeah.
That's-
It was for the fire restoration, not the entire building rehab.
So as I appreciated the renovation estimate, I'm looking at like $249,000. That's just for the fire damage. That's because the building I saw needed a lot more than just the fire damage. And
Correct.
That is correct. So what this was the summary of the traveler's insurance estimate for reimbursement if in fact all they were responsible for was repairing the damage created by the fire, not for a full building restoration.
So when we're considering the financial hardship, we're just considering just the fire damage. What would have been helpful is maybe the rehabilitation cost for the whole building, because that's required to really, as I see it, put it in use.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. But
Um,
you are correct. You're only looking at the fire restoration component.
Okay,
Jeff, wasn't the figure for that included in the packet, I thought?
it is, but
just the fire damage. That's the part I could not reconcile. He's saying that's just fire damage.
Okay, so there's not a second separate figure for doing the entire thing, including the restoration, I mean, the fire restoration. Okay.
Not from what I see,
Just one, and I think that's what they were saying, I just wanted to be clear.
which would be substantial.
Mhm.
The other thing is, as part of some of the standards determining the preservation of a site or structure for undue hardship, have you considered the use of the building for any other use in light of the fact that you have a potential larger project going on there, which again, I think is exceptional. Have you considered adapting this structure within some plans down the road?
No, we haven't. And, I can speak for the challenges that we faced in buildings that are less complicated than this one. As you may have noticed, entering the building, one of the first major concerns becomes handicap accessibility in any building that's made open to the public. And when you talk other uses other than being used as an apartment building, the only other options would be office or retail. And the handicap accessibility in that building is extremely limited, if even possible, because of some of the narrow corridors, narrow doorways, and walls. The other challenge would be the renovation in its entirety, converting it, getting a structural analysis, because the loading conditions on a floor in a commercial building are different than the loading conditions in a residential structure. So there may be some structural some structural reinforcement that needs to be required to meet some of the current building codes, even under the rehab code. The building is probably just borderline with sprinkler systems, but all new mechanical and electricals would need to go in to bring it up to current standards for office or commercial use.
Okay,
Yeah, we could say, we just,
thank you.
commercial space we can't fill today.
Yeah, and Rob makes a good point. We have empty commercial spaces in buildings we've already made huge investments in. So we try to build to demand, and the demand just isn't there right now.
I'm saying, this is Carol, is it possible for this building to be modified as an extension of the space that you're working with between the buildings with that narrow passage, overflow seating, or extensive extra bathroom use or something like that?
Modified to be an extension of, I'm sorry, I missed the last part. You faded out.
Here it comes where it abuts the section of your adjacent property. Is there a way that you can combine these into an internal working, utilizing the space between them for another use, like additional bathroom space or some sort of storage or anything else that's part of your business model?
Well, again, I think the economics wouldn't pan out for that. A residential structure like this would not be designed for a breakout space for higher occupancies. And assembly areas would have not only more requirements to meet for egress, but also for the loadings and code concerns when you get higher occupancies in a structure. I really don't think it plays well into the overall plan for what we have envisioned for the future potential of that existing theater space.
One of the things you mentioned on the site was in the space between the two residential houses, using that for a loaded use as part of the plan that you were speculating with. Yeah, that loads right into that entertainment area that you also mentioned was a possible plan in the earlier time frame, which would be stuck right in the middle of the entire auditorium area. So suggestion was somehow utilizing the perimeter of the building as a bypass to that, which wouldn't be public space, but rather just an extension, so we don't lose the streetscape of that.
Yeah. Well, I think I understand what she's talking about. And that would take a whole different level of evaluation on that building. We've never looked at it from that angle. And again, the economics of it, just from my experience, wouldn't make sense. Trying to tie it in and making it an extension of the theater space or even the public area outside of the theater space. That space would function best as a formalized entry or breakout, even if it was an outside patio for the theater. The theater, if you noticed, has an occupancy rating of, was it 300 or 350 people? It would be hard to break all those people out into that narrow little corridor between those two buildings if that was your primary entrance into the theater.
And I'll leave up if anybody wants to be in public question about the streetscape. It's fine.
I had a suggestion. Is it possible at all to gut the building and keep the exterior facade, because that seems to be the most preserved portion of the building, as well as the most historically significant part?
I would have to say, without giving that a lot of evaluation, no. If you saw how many, in residential structures like this, the load-bearing walls start with beams in the basement, go all the way up through the structure. And gutting the building would mean having to put in structure to supplement the wall framing that you're taking out that carries the floor. And if you take the floors out, the walls have nothing to stabilize them. You've got basically a building that's just sitting there unbraced from the interior, waiting to fail.
George, anything else?
Keeping the exterior walls, gutting out the interior.
As an empty building, but just using that facade for whatever other purpose you want to use it later on. But
I'm sorry, I didn't hear any of that.
I said I wasn't suggesting keeping the building permanently empty, but using the facade and using the building for whatever else you want to do later on.
Only trying to maintain the facade, is that what you're saying? The front street facade?
Well, yeah, keep the front street facade and then do remake the inside of the building, if that's possible.
And again, I think ultimately it's going to come down what the best use of that space is going to be as we move down the road. Consider what the potential of the theater space is if it's going to remain. No. And you end up with a
When you
street.
said you were going to keep it as you're going to demolish the building and use that space as like a back patio for the theater, do you have any concrete plans for that? Yeah, also this summer.
That came through completely garbled. I didn't understand.
Yeah, it's hard to hear. Sorry.
Okay. All right, so I was asking if you said that you were gonna use it as a back patio for the theater, but do we have any like concrete plans for that? They have been drawn up.
Now, I think we mentioned, this is all speculative at this point. We don't know if or how the theater will ultimately be used. So right now, we're just talking hypotheticals. There are no plans, and we're not going to be developing plans until there really is an intended use for that rear theater space and the location where the houses are currently sitting. I don't think Mr. Bowman would be willing to commit to anything as an absolute for that location, not knowing any more than we know about the use of those spaces at this point.
I see.
Mr. Chairman, one question the staff does have is, because of the conversation that's been had about costs, because typically a lot of it boils down to is, if you put money into it, is it going to be worth it once you've done it? That really is what the formula typically boils down to. The quotations that are in the packet are based on the renovations associated with fire damage. But as members of the body pointed out, it really needs more than that. But that data was not provided. So it might be who both this body and the applicants to continue this hearing and have additional numbers drawn up to show what the true figures would be to truly be that building right or renovated. So you have better data by which to justify if you're going to approve a demolition based on the cost. In other words, allow them to help themselves by updating their data to show, okay, it's going to cost $200,000 worth of insurance money to fix the fire damage, but it also is going to be this additional extra money for a total of A plus B. And then with A plus B together, is it going to be worth, is the property going to be worth at least that or more after the work is done? In other words, give them the opportunity to supplement their application, provide additional data to justify the numbers for it built.
Yeah, you actually stole my thunder.
Sorry.
That's exactly what I was going to recommend, that we actually do evaluation of the building, not the cost to be rehabilitated as its current use. Maybe even, sir, you mentioned the cost and specifics of why it work to be adapted as a potential extension of the Sonic Temple Theater. I think that would help me be much more comfortable to have that, especially on record, and having those type of dollars. And I definitely understand why you don't want to commit anything in that space, but you did mention the vision you have for that. And I think it would be helpful a little bit to see, even if it's just a vision of how that space would be utilized, because, you know, as far as the criteria here, you know, the betterment of the city, and obviously the project is, again, I think it would be in our best interest to have it on record, so that we're at least making a decision about everything that is available to us at the time. Right.
And value and numbers are a moving target all the time, and it's, you know, we have to weigh in this marketplace, not the future, not the past, and that makes it even more difficult because of the standard that the applicant may take for renovation versus a bare bones passable by code improvement. There's a lot of in there, and I hate to have it just be that issue. And I think these are all really important.
We can't hear anything.
And of course, I'm mistaken, the value of the land with building is worth a lot more than the shape. But it costs a certain amount of money to bring that road back to code. So yeah, seeing those numbers would provide me more comfort.
And the applicant's kind of in between a rock and a hard place here in a way, because they do have intentions for that area. And let's say 2 years from now, they have this grand proposal that's going to do all sorts of wonderful things to that theater areas and bring jobs. There is another provision in the ordinance that we have called the Major Economic Development Opportunity, which allows a building to be brought down based on the economic, as long as it's not an A resource, based on the economic potential of what's proposed to replace it. You can only use it one time to this point. But so here they're kind of in a position where they can't use the economic economic development or argument because they don't have any plans yet or proposed use. But on the other hand, that puts them in a position to have to make truly just only an argument for economic hardship based on figures. And then it gets into the question of, do they really want to put a ton of money into a building that their true desire is to come in and could possibly get approval on an economic development argument 2 years from now to tear down and say it's just their top. So,
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm just saying that, they mentioned they have a vision. I'm just saying.
Sure.
It would be helpful to see that. I'm with the understanding you're not committing.
right. And staff generally comment on this whole application. We don't make a positive or negative recommendation. You all want demolitions. We put the arguments in front of you and we let you make your own call. Staff's only concern on this one is given its visibility and not knowing some sort of true end date on when they plan on doing something to the site, that it shouldn't just stay gravel and that there should be some sort of drop date, some sort of finished appearance of that space, whatever that may be, even if it's just grass and fence, to be required at some certain point down the road. Because the proposal is to tear the building down and backfill the shed. So then the question is, well, how long can it be? That'd be 10 years from now where it's still shale on the street like that. Behind one of our premier restaurants. So staff's only comment on this is that you do approve once you conclude your deliberations or possibly get more information from the applicant. Staff's only comment is that their proposed treatment of the site should have some sort of drop dead date by which they have to come in with something that appears to finish the space. And if it's their project is we're all well and good, but if there's 2 years from now or whatever date is picked, nothing is still percolating along those lines. They really need to do something that stays up in the shell.
So, does our applicant need to get requesting that additional budgetary information? Is that an issue that they can provide us with that particular data and maybe some type of description? And I know the time frame is kind of open, but I think my concern is the building is not so much an eyesore. I mean, the front of the building looks fine as it is, but obviously being a vacant building is a problem for downtown. Having it come down is one thing, but then having the gaping hole in the city block is a little bit more problematic for me, not knowing what time frame is. And I understand trying to look at the crystal ball, it could be many years out. One thing we don't want to have happen is, it sits there for the next 50 years and it's just a simple block. So I don't know if there's any way to give us some kind of time frame when you think something could possibly be taken or put in that particular place. I guess one of the questions I would have is, if we were to approve something like this to be demolished, is that something that's going to occur tomorrow, or is it something that, within a year or two would come down? I don't know what your timing, to actually demolish the building would be.
I'm sorry, was that a question posted to us?
Yeah. So there's a couple things in there. Obviously, get some additional budgetary information on full renovation costs of the building to help solidify the economic hardship question is one item. Two, any idea how soon you would be looking to demolish if this application would be approved? And then any type of time frame. And I know it's, looking well down the road, but we'd like to have some type of understanding when something could go back in its place. I know you're still trying to finalize that vision and those plans. One thought that I had is, yeah, we could take the building down, but maybe you're building a 20-foot high fence or something that has some type of painted design that, kind of maintains that streetscape there along that area, or we're getting some trees or something planted so that obviously the restaurant next door is going to be overlooking into that, particular lot. Not that the view right now is any better than having it all cleared, but it just doesn't look like they're just a gaping hole, where trash is going to collect at that point.
Okay, I think I understand your question. I'm sorry. A lot of it's still coming through very garbled. This virtual session isn't working quite as well as the first one did. So addressing them one at a time. Yes, we can prepare additional information on what the full renovation cost of that building would be. Using the fire restoration component as the baseline to make it habitable again, but then looking beyond that as what the building really would require to be restored to a space that I think we would all be happy with and would be an asset to downtown Hagerstown. That is going to take a little bit of effort, not something we're going to turn around quickly. Moving on to the second one, and I think that was the question regarding the timing for the demolition. We don't like that building there, volatile, potentially can be vandalized at any time. The fire chief doesn't like that building there. We would like to get that building demolished and would act on that demolition permit as quickly as it was approved. Moving on to the third question, and I guess one of my concerns is if we have to satisfy all three, then the third question is really the critical question for Bowman to answer. At this point in time, we can't guarantee any type of development or structure to replace that building at that location. What we can guarantee is that we would discuss with Mr. Bowman what your concerns are about when a building's torn down, you fill the hole with shale, you walk away from it. That's not very desirable. We wouldn't want that either to be a good neighbor to the Schmackle Stube or to be a good occupant downtown. I heard mention of fences. I heard mention of trees. I heard mention of topsoil and grass at one of our last sessions. I think we could convince Mr. Bowman to put money into that location to beautify it temporarily, with the understanding that at some point in time, we do have plans to ultimately develop with a new structure or a more magnificent entrance into the theater. We just can't guarantee what that would be or when that would be completed at this time. And if that's one of the critical decision points, then I'm afraid that's one we're not going to be able to comply with.
I think that would be very helpful, to kind of alleviate some of our fears of what could ultimately happen there and just not be just an empty lot left, for things to kind of collect. I know in years past, we've had some developers come through and, we hear the grandiose schemes and then, the developers, walk away from the project and we're just left with a hole in the city streetscape. So, we just want, something there that, can at least make it a pleasing appearance, in the interim until your project is able to move forward.
And just so that we're clear at the staff level, what Jeff is describing, what Mike is just summarizing exactly what we're looking for. Staff is not suggesting that as a condition that they come in with a plan saying this is how we're going to build it. We all understand it's all speculative. We don't have anybody on the line. But the idea is it should be something, if it's more than a couple of years or so, they should have a plan for making it look decent on the streetscape, if that's grass or a couple of trees or something like that. As a placeholder, as Mike mentions, while you may spend another couple of years to get something more line there, rather than just have indefinite gravel at the sidewalk.
So I think what we would like to see is this discussion extended at least possibly for another couple weeks or a month. We're fortunate to have a landscape architect on staff here, and I'm sure that he can put together a plan that we can present to Mr. Bowman, make sure that he buys in to the solution that we think would satisfy some of your initial concerns for beautification for that site, and then resubmit or supplement the packet that's already been submitted with not only the plan, the landscape plan that we would do at that location, but the additional information regarding the reconstruction of that building in its entirety.
And Jeff, one figure that you're gonna also need is an estimated value of what that building would be at the end of the expanded renovation, both the fire and then bringing it up, like you said, to a place you like that. Because it's all based on what is the investment you're putting in versus what the property's worth when it's over.
Yeah, and we can probably work with Tim on that. A lot of it's going to be, the economics are dictated by not only what the building's worth, but what you can rent it for in the end. And if it ends up upside down, then that's plays in our favor for the hardship case.
Right.
So now one more question. When you're able to bring back financials, will you be able to differentiate whether you are bringing in, we go to the 5 units that the building was last at, or the original 2-family dwelling that was there, so that we know which one you are pricing this at?
I'm sorry,
The original building was a 2-family dwelling and modified into a 5-unit apartment.
yes, it did start out originally as a 2-unit, we think, and was modified to 5.
Yes, my question would be, when you are able to provide updated financials, it would be clear to identify which type you would be pricing this out at. You may choose to not give an update based on the 5-unit building, but what it would be to reduce the number of units as an option.
That would actually be part of their package because their property values can be based on rent returns. And rent returns can be based on identifying a number of units and what they would rent for. So I would think that would automatically be included as part of the material.
Okay,
Yeah, we wouldn't have any objections. We can table this particular application until such time you can resubmit or submit some additional data for us to consider. We look forward to receiving that.
okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Set a specific amount of time, table for up to 60 days. They can always come back and ask another extension. I believe it's not left over.
Think you can turn some information around in 45 days?
Yes,
Okay. All right, then we're taking a motion to table this particular application for 45 days for the applicant to provide some additional information.
I make a motion to table HDC 2021-14 for 45 days to allow Bowen Development Corporation to come back to us with additional information in regard to the total rehab of the property.
Is there a second? Second. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. We appreciate you working with us, folks, and we look forward to getting that information.
we certainly appreciate you working with us and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget, if you need more time, you contact Steve Bachner or Debbie Calhoun, and you put a request in.
Understood and agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
All right, next up is workshop, which we have none. New business, we have 2021 preservation work for any nominations. Anybody have any suggestions?
What's the vinyl store? Especially vinyl.
I don't know if they were awarded anything last year or not. For the last renovation of the old Massey,
You won't ask me for advice.
the old Massey Square.
Or can't remember, the backside of, I should have had last, I was looking at last year's list, over there, because we doled out a big batch last year. I don't think that was part of it. If not, it's obviously, I think everybody would agree that it definitely was. I would just need to check to see if we wouldn't be redoing it. That's easy enough for me to check. There's one, you basically approved everything was almost, it was like 6 or 7 items last year. We usually would kind of struggle for 1 or 2. Last year we had a big boatload. The only one that we didn't do was the fire house because it wasn't quite done yet.
We didn't do Western Avenue because it was replaced in the past.
That's right, there was one on West Road, you know. So let's see.
Any other suggestions?
So, what is the criteria? Just exterior. I know it's on.
Basically, a preservation award is a piece of paper that costs us about 7 cents, so you get it if you really want to do. There's no real criteria.
I don't know about no, but I was very impressed. A lot of them, and I think that's the type of space.
They've done a lot for the front of that building and the interior too.
Yeah, keeping the clothes was, to me, just amazing. Putting the symbol on the floor, if that was appropriate, I would think that.
No, there's not that big of a deal. I think they're still working, so I think, well, maybe, we want to give them a little bit more time, maybe, this time next year, they should probably have a lot of that pretty well filled out and renovated in that particular space.
Well, that's what that's why I was kind of asking. Is it exterior, is it interior too, portion of the interior?
It can be anything we want it to be.
Yeah, we typically don't have for people interior, but that's not to say that we can't recognize them for, taking into that level, because obviously it preserves the interior of the building that helps. So
I obviously they preserve the exterior, but they were literally keeping the for today, they preserve the lands in light of not a lot of other recommendations. I would think that's how
If our new Hub City podcast guys mention this board's conservation board, maybe that's something they could say that those people who have done interior work could let us know. Because it's not something that we would normally be perfect, so maybe that would help get this topic in more hands, and encourage people to brag and do it right.
Some other things that are floating around out there, the city took on a project of renovating a house on South Prospect Street into a duplex. It was apartments, and it was set up as a duplex. It's not quite done yet. I can check with our economic development officer, the ones that are overseeing it. But it was a building that was sitting vacant for a while. It was broken up into 4 apartments. The city bought it and is restoring, renovating it, and making it two. It's actually built as a single, but there was actually a decent natural divide building. We can look into that. Another thing that you might want to think about, it's a little bit outside of the box, but it's something, is within the last year, the city did a comprehensive zoning, which we do that every 10 years associated with the comprehensive plan. One of the things is that we changed the zoning of some downtown areas to be more consistent with historic development and use patterns. It's called the neighborhood mixed use zoning district. The area that's in 2 areas that are involved in that are East Baltimore Street, Southside East Baltimore Street, and where the synagogue is, across the street from Upline. And then also up on the triangle where Oak Hill joins in Potomac, where Shingles is and all that. The zoning in those areas before just, we didn't have a pool other than the downtown zoning, which really can't be outside of the downtown. And there's certain things you don't want, that permitted downtown, you don't want those areas. So we actually created a new zone that's called neighborhood use, which basically took the existing development patterns and uses in those two areas and basically created an existing conditions in such a zoning district. These are uses that are permitted, build up to the street, because again, all, there really aren't any setbacks like that. But you might want to think about, one of the mayor and council for adopting the neighborhood mixed use zoning district in certain established neighborhoods.
Write it down.
All that. All right, so we'll finalize the list and that's what we'll do with the, this place made, right, at the.
Yeah, we have a little bit of time. Is there anything what has gone on in the last year for City Park? I think they took that fence down along.
Took the hedge out.
Yeah, the hedge, that's the hedge. No, they're taking out the hedge.
Add the fence up.
There might be some stuff throughout the state somewhere. Or going on.
Yeah, park commission.
Yeah, anyone part when that's done, we should do that for the more.
That's probably next year.
I mean, is dredging pond considered preservation or maintenance?
Well, they're not just grading, they're also,
Yes.
building the, they're also like redoing the, more.
Being more nowadays, but we build, you know.
Part of the recreation,
Yeah, I think, next year you're probably going to want to be getting one for the, for Hadley Farm, which is the park connection on West Washington Street. But beyond that, I'm kind of starting to draw a line. Oh, and it's too soon for the cabin on Town Street. That's still very much work in progress. I can see that would be a top of the list for next year.
Oh, I was going to mention, Preservation Maryland was, they had a podcast including about the Johnson Street cabin, what they do, it was pretty interesting.
They have to pick the whole thing up and basically rebuild the foundation.
Yeah.
Any other new business? All right, any old business, we have a board of zoning appeals case to South Prospect.
Yeah, we received we had to develop a problem, a little bit of a problem. You all approved the fence for this property. The property corner of South Prospect, Baltimore, been sitting vacant for a number of years. It was purchased. The person is doing a lot of work to fix it up. They came in, finally got approval of a fence that was approved, and the fence contractor, due to the topography of the site, according to them, ended up building it in such a way where it's a little bit taller than the zoning ordinance permits for privacy fences. The zoning ordinance limits them to 6 feet, but due to the slope and all, the way they built it, it ended up coming in a little bit higher than that. 6 feet is 72 inches. It's coming in about 70, so that's 6 inches a little higher. Since this is something that's in the historic district, it's a physical item subject to review, we thought we would mention it to you to see if you want to provide comment to the BZA, and whether or not you're going to want to see a revised application come back to you. Talking this much additional height on the fence, I would, as staff, if you would delegate me to approve from an HCC perspective and not have to force it back in front of you, that's fine. But since the BZA activity question is, do you want to officially weigh in on the issue?
If my comment would be just looking at the, your, basically, one of the dates that they're on. The posts are at 78, it's basically 6 inches above, but if you're really looking at the top rail, it's about 75 inches, only about 3 inches above the actual
height of 6 foot, so. I'm not, and I guess the other tape measure looks like it's at 7 or 6 foot. At some locations and other locations, it looks like it's a bit higher, so.
That's the joy of fencing on the hill.
Yeah, I don't know that I have an issue with it at this point. I mean, it's within range. I mean, I don't have to, both have to be taller than the fence, so it is what it is.
I don't have a problem with that. It's beautiful, it's good, but I have a problem with, why would the bricks fixed?
It's very front. Did you see the?
That's a good question, and maybe, I didn't think out loud here. If they know that they have a problem with this, it might have some fixing bricks on this issue side. What you may want to do is go on record as a suggestion, go on record saying you have no objection to fence that looks nice, but as a condition, you ought to make sure that the sidewalk is repaired.
I have two questions, because I don't know if I was on the board with this, I don't recall this case, but, my two questions are fences a permitted requirement here? So this would have been inspected and approved, but does our requirements come into play in that process?
Well, what happens is we receive a fence permit application. We find out it's in the historic district. Therefore, we get them to fill out an application for this body to do the process like any other review. And we did that 3 months ago or so. It's been recent. You must have missed that meeting or something. And it went through, I mean, I think all was agreed, there's nothing wrong with it per se. So it was approved, we issued the fence permit. And how it got caught was our inspectors, they go and do a follow-up inspection to make sure it's built according to the permit. And that's when it was caught. They went out there to take measures that this is a little over 6 feet.
I just think there's like a mystery between the permit saying it has to be this height and the contractor not installing it that way.
That's basically an accurate description.
Okay.
The contractor did not install it to the letter of the permit.
Okay.
It was a little bit over, maybe they thought, well, a couple inches, the inspector not care, but the inspector do care. So as a result, we're at this, where we can't close the permit unless they get variance.
I feel the person was sure.
Yeah, then it looks like they had to have another piece of wood in there to make the railings or the fence section, so. Are the sidewalks responsibility of the property owner?
It is a big damage.
I'm sorry.
It is, I would think it is a big damage. If this is a result of them doing this fence work, I think that they would have to,
And their responsibility. I would think, and otherwise, the city now is the sidewalk. Okay.
so it sounds like nobody's opposed to the variance. The question is going to be, do you just want to be silent, and let the process work itself out, or do you want to weigh in with a specific comment of approval or indifference, and maybe or maybe not address the correct issue? Again, I'm laying your options out. So you decide.
I know one thing I would certainly want to make sure our board says is that a reminder that we didn't approve it this way. We understand the circumstances. Is not precedent setting that when we want to join this fence to something else, if this somehow allows it, if we allow this, we allow something else on this parcel. I think it's important that we remind everybody that it's independent by parcel, not a blanket okay for correction, just to show that the board wasn't negligent here. And then, of course, any damage to your department.
But it's like Steve said, we could pass on the fence construction as long as something is done to take care of the brick situation.
Assuming that it's a result of them putting the fence in, making that assumption for this conversation.
So when you say let the process work out, that would resolve the issue.
I think we as a city would probably be asking about that ourselves. anyway, regardless of what this body chooses to do or not do. When I say allow the process to work out, more often than not, because it's not often we get variance applications in the historic district. We ask every month, the planning commission, everything is on the agenda, because obviously everything within the city technically is within the purview of the planning commission. And we ask them, okay, here are the things that are on the agenda, do you want to comment or weigh in on that? More often than not, they do. In this particular case, because it's an historic district, because we're going to be asking them this question too. Anything that's within the purview of the planning commission, within the city, we'll be asking them if they want to weigh in. We ask several bodies, anything that's in a historic district, then this body gets added to the list. We don't get variances in historic districts, very hardly at all. But this is one of those cases. So because it's an historic district, we're asking you, like we're asking the planning commission, do you want to provide guidance and wisdom to the BZA in their hearing of the case?
I just think the problem is that people use applicants use the argument occasionally that it was done over there, if it was before the board, for instance, if they're trying to apply that higher standard, and it feels like we're always in the defense on that. And here is one that's within this board that wasn't approved this way. Does that make?
One thing I would point out is Board of Zoning Appeals has very strict criteria for which they have to grant a variance.
Okay.
One of which is self-rated hardship, and there's unique character associated with the property. There's actually 6 criteria in the ordinance, and they need to make positive findings on all of them in order to be granted. So they're not going to say, hey, no, you're a really nice person, and it's nice looking pencil. They don't operate that. Technically, in this case, they're going to need to argue against self-rated hardship by focusing on the topography and the uniqueness of that property. So I think the criteria that the BZA takes into account when reviewing it will satisfy your concern.
Okay.
They treat it individually.
And this would be the case. Obviously, that I could argue too that rather than do it right, and do it on hardship.
And then reason.
No, I agree with you. But
I mean, that's not anybody, you don't really.
calculating to that versus this. No, I agree with you. So we want to formal motion, or do you just want to take comments back?
What you would do is make a motion to direct me to amend it. If you want to do one, you may want to say we don't want to do anything, but if you want to do something, you need a motion saying you're going to send a memo to the plant to the Board of Zoning Appeals addressing X, Y, and Z. And I'll go from that over to the chair's signature.
Are we all in agreement that the fence is okay as it is, except for the non-repair of the grid of the sidewalk along the fence? Are we all in agreement?
If this is the only portion of the fence, and this doesn't continue the rest of the perimeter, or it could be easily adjusted or something. I'm sorry, I don't recall the case, but
It was on February this year.
that, is this just fronting this brick paver area, or is this the whole perimeter property?
I don't have an answer for that. If my presumption would be that they fence the entire backyard, so it's a downhill slope toward the alley, whatever topography issues are over on the sidewalk are probably the same on the other side property as well.
I guess I just want to, I agree with you as far as that part of it. I just don't want it to look like it's a pass because like it's like an excuse. I want that to say that we don't agree with what happened, but as Charles said, we might be able to overlook it, but I guess I'd be looking for the rationale part of it.
Leave that to the Board of Zoning Appeals. I would
Okay.
suggest focusing on the HDC issue. It's a design issue from your perspective. Because they have enough safeguards, they actually have more stringent safeguards in their process criteria. They have to use to evaluate, and you all do.
That's,
When
I
it comes
think
to the
that's.
decisions that they make.
So when you say let the process work out.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I think that's-
So you want to forward something saying you're okay with the fence as is. But if the fence work resulted in the damage to the brick, which
So moved. Second, for comments on the Board of Zoning Appeals that the fence, we have no issue with the construction of the fence that stands, but we have more concern with the appearance of a brick sidewalk.
and one of the draft that I'll send out to you all for review before we send it out. I'm going to clarify that is on the assumption that the fence would work is what caused the condition of the brick. If they bought the property as it is and it's in the right of way, I think we don't have a leg to stand on and say, go fix the brick. It's a result of the fence work that I think.
Because I don't remember what was there, it was just a chain link fence and you were so overgrown with brush that when they cleaned it out, that, the roots and whatever probably disrupted some of the brick, along there.
I'll write something that makes sure covers your concerns and your interests.
There's a paper.
So, we're probably looking during the brush now. All right, so we'll look for that, come around to finalize that. I guess I'll move in a second. I guess all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
I'll try to get something out for you tomorrow.
All right. All right, any other old business?
Yes, what's that? Yes. One other thing is, at your last meeting, you denied an application, first time in a long time. And in this particular case, the applicant was, reading material into the record for possible appeal. I guess it's probably looking at it, but we don't know. My question to you is, the normal process that we have is we send a letter to people, your application is approved, your application is denied. Your application is denied, you get a deal with the circuit court. Given the circumstances, would you want me to do a decision, draft you for your consideration? Because ultimately, you're the one who have to approve it. A decision in order similar to the BZA case, citing the reasons why you denied it, so they have a document to actually take to court. And if they choose to court.
This is clarification, as I appreciate it, denied her second request to use something on the side, however, the first request that was modified to use an alternative material was approved.
That's correct, but they have the right, if they want to appeal your denial of the material in the garage to the courts that they choose.
So we need that. Yes.
Isn't normal procedure when you have this approval and then a reconsideration is denied and reverts back to after you've already approved and said you approved? Is that an anomaly or is that part of the normal? And is there a time frame requirement to it? Or
I think that was an anomaly in this particular case.
We were trying to be efficient and using the same case file. We previously approved the garage with fiber cement siding, that still stands. We had them amend the application to change the material and deny the amendment. I think we're fine procedure. It's just we rejected maybe 4 applications in the last 11 years. We just don't have a whole lot of.
is there a time? Is there a time? Because the applicant can still complete what was approved.
They need notice from us saying that it was denied. And then they have a 30-day window after that to appeal.
But you've already said that.
We have not.
I think if we raise it up, we need to determine this document recording. Because otherwise we're gonna come back, say we get to that point, we're gonna have to come back and provide that document again. So,
And is the letter, because this is don't know if practice is this a letter that would remind the applicant that the first request is still standing in order to proceed.
That would be in the document. Basically, it would read like a judge's order in the court case. I write these types of orders all the time before zoning, all of their decisions are in that format. And we would be, you want me to do one? Yeah. It reminds me, the direction that I got from the city attorney was, yeah, we can do it if you want to, it's up to you, but you're the ones who have to control what it says. I just can't, you can't just say, Steve, go write something up and send it off. Right? You're the ones that are to do it, you all are the ones that have to sign off. I can draft something for you, but, right,
Yeah, if you want to grab something, I appreciate that.
but especially in light of that.
She was great. Great, any other old business? Any announcements?
Yeah, with, the changing environment with, the COVID starting to rise, obviously, we're back in, session. As a result of the city hall being closed, for an extended amount of time to the public, it caused the city to reevaluate certain, security protocols. And one of the things that they're doing is they're putting control access on the elevators. And of course, the front door in the castle will allow you just let the building be open while we're meeting, and we can close up. You can't do that. So what we're going to do is you all meet at 4:30. The city hall closes at 4:30. If you're late, or if an applicant is late, what we're arranging for is for our office to be issued a cell phone for this board, for the planning commission, for the BZA, all the boards will be staffed after hours. And there'll be a notice, and we'll give you the phone number, but there'll be a notice on the door saying if it's you or if it's an applicant, if you're late, call this number, we'll come down and let you in. If you call us, let us know you're here. But otherwise, as you notice, Debbie was absent first begins the meeting because she was down there. It's just been practice. We can't do that. So you just need to be aware that if you need to be on time, not on time, make sure you have your phone on, so you can call us at this magic number that we'll get later. And I'll say, hey, I'm here, let me know. Missing anything on that?
Okay. Anything else?
Well, that's gonna cover the elevator. Somebody's still gonna have to sit downstairs. Somebody will still have to sit downstairs to let people up.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. That's a good point. But yeah, you can use, you will not be able to use the elevators. Unless you have somebody there either.
And we can't use the stairs, Chris.
I mean, I don't know how I'm using the stairs. I can't use the stairs.
And security, I don't want to get too much. Yeah.
So that's the change too, because it used to stay until 4:30.
All right. Bottom line is, there's going to be some changes. We're letting you know what some of them are. It's not that big of a deal. It's not like we do other things we still need to work out, right? But things can change a little bit as far as access to the building.
All right. Anything else? Hearing none, motion to adjourn. All right. So this next meeting, April 22nd.
Yeah. Hold on.
I don't think.